Welcome. All right. Here we are with Brandon Richardson.
We're back.
All right. This
back.
is number 3.
It is episode 3.
Yeah. Can you believe it? I think we're almost official now.
If we keep staying consistent, Russ, we'll have our own little Star Wars series. What do they have, 9 episodes?
Is that
Yeah, well, I don't know. You can't. I could never keep track of them because they go in the wrong order.
Yeah.
How are you supposed to keep track of something when the numbers don't go in sequential order?
Right.
Yeah.
They go back in
What they started with 4, right?
Yeah.
I'm not a Star Wars nerd, so I'm looking for validation here,
You're not going
Russ.
to get it from me.
4, 5, and 6, I feel like was the original Star Wars trilogy that came. And then I don't know what happened after that. I lost track.
You got me.
Yeah.
Now there are all these offshoots and everything.
Yeah, if you've got to go forward in time, backward in time, I start to get confused. And
Now you get the Mandalorian, which is pretty cool.
well, there's that new one too, Andor. Is that the new?
Yeah,
release?
Andor's been out for a little while. But
Has it?
second season of Mandalorian, or third season of Mandalorian.
Third season just came out. Yeah, and since we're talking about pop culture, the new season of Ted Lasso came out yesterday.
I don't have Apple TV, so
It's not hard to
I've
get,
watched
Russ.
the first season, but I haven't watched any since.
It was
I want to just binge it all at once. So
Yeah,
Apple
yeah.
TV for a month or
I
something
get
like
it,
that.
yeah.
Get them all.
Ted Lasso was definitely one for me, Russ, that helped me stay mentally sane during the pandemic.
Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, it was that, like, it came out, I feel like, right when things were just getting wild. It was like March or April of 2020.
Yeah.
And I just remember, like, sitting down and watching it every night and just feeling like you could escape to, like, because you've seen it, right? The first season, at least. It's a unique show. There's like a positive, feel-good vibe to it, but it's also like sports, which is good. I like that. And it's a sport that I'm not necessarily super familiar with. Do Not Disturb does not function. Put my phone on Do Not Disturb, and I'm getting calls left and right. So when you do that, Russ, when that happens, what you do is you go power down.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I'm going full power down. That way, we are safe during this podcast.
Post concentration right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I wanted to have the phone right there just so I could see the time. Because I'm kind of like the white rabbit in Alice in Wonderland. Yeah, Alice in Wonderland, the white rabbit.
Well, we got a timer right down there, so take a look at that.
Good. All right. Less stress. So,
Brandon, like, leaning forward, you know that he's looking at the time.
right. So, Russ, I have a question for you.
All right.
Do you know where the word podcast originated from?
The word podcast.
Yeah. Because I was thinking about this. I go, like, what does it mean? I'm the guy that's always wanting to know what something means or where it came from, and my brain just kind of goes to that space. So I did a little research, and I came in with this little
You went down the rabbit hole.
trivia question
right.
for you. No ideas?
No ideas. I'm sure someone was in a pod somewhere, maybe. And
That's what I thought, too. Like, what kind of a pod were they in, though?
I don't know. Maybe like a recording studio, just like we're
Yeah.
here today in the chat cave.
That's kind of what I was thinking, too. And then I was like, well, what about the word cast? Like, what are you doing from that pod that involves casting? You're not fishing.
You're not, well, maybe you're fishing for
Listeners?
listeners.
We are.
Yeah, information. Do we have any listeners? I think we do. I think we have a couple anyways.
So I'll tell you, Russ, because I looked it up. So I didn't know this independent of doing a little research, but it's a portmanteau. Do you know what a portmanteau is?
I have no idea what a portmanteau is.
So a portmanteau.
Toad.
Yeah, I'm assuming it's of French origin with that type of a pronunciation. Portmanteau is the combination of 2 different words to create a new word. I'll give you a couple examples, okay? Motel.
Motel.
Do you know that that's a combination of 2 different words? Motor and hotel.
Is that right?
Right. So it became motel. Here's another one for you. Brunch.
Lunch and breakfast.
Yeah. So those are portmanteaus. And so podcast is also a portmanteau. It is the combination of the word iPod and broadcast. Weird, right?
Yeah, it is. Makes
Little
sense.
tidbit for everybody this morning.
Then there's Contel. You've heard of that before, right?
Who?
Contel? Condo hotel?
Oh, Condotel. Yeah, Condotel. Condotel. Yeah, I've heard of that. So there's portmanteaus all over the place. You just didn't know about it. A portmanteau. Yeah, it's a portmanteau with that French on the end there. Little French twist. But it's also a type of luggage.
Yeah.
Like,
and it's the last name of someone really cool. So.
So pack your portmanteau. We're going on a trip.
All right.
Or do a.
My kids were really excited because we went on a
Yeah.
cruise a couple weeks ago.
All right.
And as you're getting on the cruise ship and you're putting your luggage down, the porters come over and
Yeah.
they help you load your luggage up. And
I know.
Kids were very excited. That
What an
everybody
operation.
Had our last name on the back
Yeah.
of their shirts.
I'm always impressed by the sophistication of that whole operation, getting people on and off cruise ships. It's a lot of people.
It is.
How many
I think it was
people were on your cruise?
4,800
Yeah, it's a lot of people.
plus all the people that are on the boat already.
The workers.
All the
There's
workers.
another 2,000 or something of them.
Probably
So there's
close to
7,000 people on the ship.
Yeah.
Cruise ships are a wonder, just that they even function. Yeah. With everything that goes on and all the different things that you have access to and the activities and the foods, there's restaurants everywhere, and it's all you can eat.
It's all you can eat. We had the drink package. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, how did that go? I was curious.
It was funny because we went with a couple groups.
Yeah.
And you have a limit of 15 drinks per day.
So
our-
per person?
Per person, which is
That's
quite a
a
bit.
healthy limit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is a healthy limit, but we were bound and determined to get to that limit.
Every day?
That was the original goal. Obviously, that did not happen. But we did make it one day. But I mean, you got to start early, and you
really got to focus on it.
You do.
It takes drive and determination to get the 15 drinks.
Yeah, and you really don't know how many drinks you have until you get up to that double digit, and then it starts showing up on your receipt.
Oh, got it.
So then you're like, "Oh, I'm almost there. I can do this."
So what? So you only hit it one day, the limit?
I only hit it one day. Yeah.
What time in the day did you end up actually getting to your 15th drink?
It was probably close to closing time, 11:30.
Oh, so it was a full day event
Yeah.
for you.
And then
How
you have a couple days that you're on the
yeah,
wherever you're staying.
and they're
all
not
ports.
giving you a discount for those days, are they?
They're not. And then you have drinks when you're off the ship
Yeah.
and whatnot.
Right. Right. Well, here's my question, Russ. How was the next day after the 15 drink day?
That was actually not a bad day.
Yeah.
Some of the other days, for some reason,
Really?
yeah. You just never know. I mean, it could be the food you're eating too much, you get bloated. It's
Yeah, that's the thing. And I always,
overindulgence of everything.
when I was younger, Russ, I always used to look at people when I went on vacation or a cruise that would go and work out.
Mm-hmm.
And I go, what's that guy doing that for? He's on vacation, right? But now I understand the older I get, like if you're doing that kind of stuff and you're eating,
You got to maintain, right?
you're not, it's not even about maintaining. It's just about like staying alive for me. Cause I'm overeating, right?
Yeah.
So if I don't like do something physical during that 7 to 10 days that you're out on the cruise ship or you're on vacation, like I feel that way, right? I feel bloated. I feel nasty. Then your vacation goes from like really, really fun and like to the point where you can't move.
Right.
You're just sitting. Some people like that. Like I don't mind not moving.
You want to relax, but you also need to stay active a little bit.
Yeah, you want to feel okay.
I felt like there was a few days that I just had to walk around the top deck there and just get some exercise. I had a drink in my hand while I was doing it, but
Yeah, but at least you're doing something physical, right? Yeah, I always wondered about that. I was like, why do those guys go on vacation and work out every day? Now I get it. You have to.
You do.
You really do. And if you care about physicality and fitness and health and stuff, like you just got to stay consistent, right? And I'm not saying that I don't care. Like I'm not like a guru. I'm not a guru over here. No. It's been a while since I was really consistently doing something. I did Spartan races for a couple years.
Right.
There was a softball team that I was affiliated with for a little while.
There was a pretty
There's an
epic
affiliation,
team.
yeah. Not that softball is necessarily at the level we were playing at, Russ. Russ and I were on a softball team together. You don't need a whole lot of
What was it? The Very Rec League that we were.
super duper rec. Yeah, and it was still an adventure, wasn't it?
It was. It was fun though.
So, anyways, all right. Well, that was what I wanted to kick things off with, Russ. Now, I do want to talk a little bit about real estate.
Real estate is a fun topic always.
And yeah, that's kind of where
and the rates
our
that go along with
wheelhouse.
it. We have a lot to talk about.
Yeah,
with rates.
we do actually in the markets.
It's pretty crazy right now, right?
Yeah. So I think what's probably on the top of everybody's mind, Russ, is this bank situation that we got going on.
Right. All the regional banks mostly that are
Struggling
to
right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of that going on. Then we had a bank failure. We had actually 2 bank failures that have been publicized. There's probably more going on or more.
Well, I know Silicon Valley Bank. Was it Credit Suisse? Is the other one, or is
No,
that
it's a
not-
bank
that one
out of New
hasn't
York
failed
called. They're in trouble though. Credit
They are.
Suisse is. Yeah, that was the one in Switzerland that's really struggling. But Signature Bank out of New York.
yet? Oh yeah.
which ironically, I don't know if this is good or bad. I know it, so I'm going to talk about it. But like, I'll just tell you guys this. The chief administrative officer is guess who?
Was it?
Did you hear about this?
One of Trump's.
No, it wasn't a Trump guy. Talk about a guy that's got a bad resume now. The chief administrative officer was the former CFO at Lehman Brothers. What have you done in the last 10, 15 years? Worked for 2 banks that failed, right? That's tough. I mean, and of course, you know, to get into the nitty gritty a little bit, the failure of the bank, or especially in Silicon Valley's case, like there's always a lot of things that happen that cause something like that to take place. Mm-hmm. And they call it a black swan event. More trivia. You know what a black swan event is?
It's a very unusual event.
Yeah.
It only happens every once in a while.
Yeah, and what they say is the reason why they call it a black swan event, not a portmanteau.
Not a portmanteau.
Not a portmanteau.
Dang, there's so many.
But it's a black swan event because black swans actually don't even exist. There's no such thing as a black swan. So if you see a black swan, it is a very rare occurrence. Mm-hmm. So rare that it doesn't ever happen.
Like a unicorn.
Like a unicorn, yeah. You ask my 4-year-old, there's unicorns everywhere, though.
Right. I mean, we talked about unicorns last time, right?
I talk about unicorns once a day, it feels like, at least. Although we're moving on to mermaids right now. Yeah, because the new Little Mermaid movie's out now. And so mermaids are really at top of mind for my 4-year-old. But anyways, the Black Swan event is, yes, an extremely rare event that is nearly impossible to predict. Like you can't, it's kind of like COVID, right?
Yeah.
That was a Black Swan event for sure. And it had, the 2 parts of a Black Swan event are it's nearly impossible to predict, but in hindsight, you saw the signs of it happen. It's weird, right? It's that dynamic of we couldn't tell it was going to happen, but then once it happened, we were like, that's why that happened, right? And so this was a Black Swan event last Friday with Silicon Valley Bank closing its doors, unable to give the money back to their customers that they were requesting to withdraw from their accounts. And of course, there was a ton of factors involved in why that happened. I'm not going to really dive into a ton of that because that's really boring stuff. But at the end of the day, what it does for like the greater markets is it creates an additional sense of instability. Anytime you have a bank fail, it was the 14th largest bank in the United States.
Is that right?
Yeah.
$200 billion in
quite a bit.
cap?
Quite a bit. But that's, it's unfortunate because our banking institutions across the country are set up in such a way to prevent this stuff from happening. Right. At least that's what we thought. But there's always something else, right? And of course, this bank was very involved in the startup community.
Right. Silicon
Valley, and specifically tech startups. Mm-hmm. And you look at kind of the landscape of the climate of the economy over the last 18 months since really the end of the pandemic, because things were booming during COVID.
They were.
Cash was everywhere,
mm-hmm. And it was
right?
cheap, right? So as much as they could.
Exactly. And so that's kind of what happened with Silicon Valley Bank is they had, they were lending out money. They were bringing on clients. People were making deposits. It was a good time. You could make a ton of money on interest in different areas. You could take more risks because it was just the risk appetite was more, what's the word I'm looking for, Russ? More palatable. Mm-hmm. Palatable. Whatever. Fast forward 18 months, and then that whole kind of sector has really come to a screeching halt. I mean, just look at kind of what happened over the last 12 to 14 months with the tech companies that we know in our market, Amazon, Microsoft, like they've been cutting forces. Right. They've been scrapping projects. They've been budgeting differently. This is the year
to get lean, right? Exactly. Everybody wants to.
Exactly. So yeah, I mean, all of that kind of led to the point where this bank specifically, Silicon Valley Bank, kind of had to start looking at their balance sheet and going, we're in hot water, that we've got some issues because primarily during the pandemic, they invested a ton of the money that the people gave them, right? Their customers put on deposit at the institution into treasury bonds. So they bought up treasury bonds, which are typically a relatively low risk, very stable investment, right? They're going to pay a smaller return, but they're safe. They're viewed as safe.
Backed by the U.S. government.
Exactly. So they bought up all these bonds at like 2-3%. Fast forward, which nobody really saw coming, how fast interest rates were going to go up, how much inflation was going to push the bond market. We didn't see that coming back then. Today, those 2-3% bonds are worth next to nothing because any regular investor like you and I can now go buy a bond paying 5 or 6%.
Right.
So we're not going to buy a 2% bond if we can get 5 or 6% in the open market, right? So this bank got caught holding all of these lower interest yielding bonds and now basically is in a position because of the way the economy's behaved and because of the cost of money getting more expensive where they have to sell these assets at a loss to pay back their depositors. And just, you can't take losses forever, right? So that's what happened. That's in the shock waves.
So the Fed, obviously, they must have been known that this was coming because they've been raising rates. And then, in fact, that raises Treasury bond yields and everything else that goes along with that. So they must have known that this was going to happen at some point.
Yeah. I think they should have known. Did they actually pay attention? Probably not.
They're so laser focused on one thing and not really
and
a macro view of everything.
They've really been hyper focused on two things: the housing market and on just like affordability for everyday Americans. Mm-hmm. Like they look at the inflation problem and they go, okay, like how do we serve our basic citizens' rights in the best way? We have to try to bring down the cost of goods like gas and food because that's what's impacting everyday Americans very dramatically right now, as is the cost of housing and rent. And they probably made a lot of their decisions based on that goal without necessarily taking into consideration how it's going to impact these smaller regional banks. But in their defense, I hate defending the Fed, but in their defense, like nobody really knew how bad it was at Silicon Valley Bank because the way that you have to declare unrealized losses on your tax returns isn't very transparent. Like you might be holding an asset that has devalued significantly and you write off a loss on your tax return, but you don't necessarily have to report that loss until it becomes realized, meaning until you sell that asset and you actually realize the loss. Does that make sense? So nobody really knew how bad it was at Silicon Valley Bank till they started having to sell these assets and take losses. Mm-hmm. Peter Thiel, have you heard of that guy? Big hedge fund guy, big money guy. Mm-hmm. He was a depositor at Silicon Valley Bank. Well, probably one of his funds was. And he was kind of the first one in line to get the money out.
Of course.
Anytime you have a guy like Peter Thiel pulling money out of somewhere, people are paying attention.
Yeah.
They go, well, what's Peter doing? Right?
Yeah.
And so then you have the other.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Exactly.
Right? Everything just starts.
You got George going, hey, Peter's pulling money out of Silicon Valley Bank. He calls Robert. Robert calls Jimmy, and Jimmy calls Jane. And next thing you know, everyone's like, get your money out of Silicon Valley Bank. And that's what happened on Friday. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, Roku, did you hear about Roku? No. I guess it might be unfortunate, but they said it wasn't a big deal. They had $500 million on deposit at Silicon Valley Bank.
$500 million.
Yeah. And the FDIC only insures up to $250,000. That's not $500 million.
There's a little gap there, right?
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm sure the government, they put the bank in receivership, so they're going to try and do what they can to, get the money back for their clients. They basically make the bank sell all of its assets to try and make the depositors whole,
right?
Which is why the bank fails. That's the failure right there. But Roku made an announcement that said, we're okay. We don't need that $500 million. I think they said it was only 25% of their actual cash holdings.
Yeah. Must be wild, nice, right?
Yeah. That was mind-blowing to me.
I thought that Roku was in such a good position.
Right. Well, everywhere you look, Roku's everywhere now. It feels like it. Anyways, they got Roku sticks everywhere I go.
I don't have a Roku stick.
Where were we on that, Russ? Why didn't we come up with Roku?
Right.
We missed the boat on that one for sure. So that's the event, the Black Swan event. Now, how does it impact like real estate and the markets in general? Well, anytime you have a bank fail, like I was saying, it's a big deal. People pay attention. They go, is there another bigger problem? And of course, the fears start to take hold of, how much worse can it get? Are there other banks that are going to fail? Now, what we're being told and what I tend to believe is the bigger banks, the Chases, the Bank of Americas, the Wells Fargos, the Citibanks, like they seem to be in a much better position.
They're just gobbling up all these assets right now.
Right. And they're more
dollar like they did back in the day to Washington Mutual and all those other companies.
And they're just more, I think their holdings are significantly more diversified than a bank like Silicon Valley Bank because they're a bigger bank and, they're not in like a niche or niche how do you prefer the pronunciation of that word?
Niche.
I like niche too, but I hear people saying niche, and I'm like,
they just want to sound fancy.
So that's going back to portmanteau.
We're not fancy guys.
The theme of our podcast today is the French language, portmanteau and niche.
Niche. All right.
So yeah, I mean the Silicon Valley Bank and this other bank that failed in New York, Signature Bank, they're very niche-y banks. Signature Bank was very heavily involved in the cryptocurrency markets. In fact, I feel like Coinbase, which was a huge exchange for crypto, was like their biggest client. They were processing a lot of those exchanges through their banking platform. And so it's very niche-y, right? You see the exposure of these institutions that are very specified in what they deal with, whereas the larger banking institutions are more diversified. So anyways, all that to say is what happens in the market when a bank fails is people panic. I mean, when you have a run on the bank, it's a panic situation.
Of course, yeah.
It's just what it is. I mean, we've all seen It's a Wonderful Life, right, George? Mm-hmm. I mean, we've been there for the run on the bank right there during the holidays. But yeah, I think the real key takeaway here for at least the short term is anytime a bank fails, people look at their investments and they go, what do I need to do to take a little bit less risk in the short term? How do I get a little bit safer? Because if this is a crack in the armor or whatever the term is, I don't know what's politically correct anymore to say. Is there going to be a bigger problem? Is it going to blow up? Is this 2008 again? Is it what's going to happen? Let me get into a safer investment. So what they do is they pull their money out of the banks and they put them into bonds. Ironically, same mistake that Silicon Valley Bank made, right? But in the short term, investing in the bond market is lower risk, safer. And so that's what's driven interest rates down a little bit. It's interesting.
As more people buy bonds, prices of the bonds go up.
Yeah.
And then the interest rates
go down. Supply and demand, right? So yeah, interest rates go down when bond prices go up. So all this money flooding into the bond market over the last 3 or 4 days has driven mortgage interest rates down a little bit. But at the same time, you got this like Fed undecided. It was so much irony in the last week. So Jerome Powell gets on the stage like last Wednesday or Thursday and says, we're still going to raise interest rates. You heard about that? We're going to keep raising interest rates. Inflation's not dead. And then 2 days later, the bank fails. Yeah. And
everyone's like, you better pause now.
You better get things under control, Jerome, or you're out of here. And then you get Janet yelling about stuff.
Everybody's all up in arms.
Yeah, Janet Yellen she was the former head of the Fed.
Right.
Yeah. So you got all these like bigwigs in Washington trying to figure out what to do. And so who knows what the Fed's going to do. So we're kind of like waiting to see what they're going to do. I feel like it's May 12th or May 14th is like the next big Fed announcement that we expect.
And the original talk was 50 basis points that they would raise it.
Yeah.
Now it's maybe 25 and maybe
or
just pause it.
Maybe pause. Yeah. Or whatever, we'll see.
Bring it back down again, you think?
I mean,
you never know, I guess. They
got to play that game. It's like they got a yo-yo on a string, right?
Yeah, they're very reactionary.
That's the thing with the Fed is they're reacting on information that's in your rear view mirror.
Right.
Which is never good. But
it's a month old by the time if they don't make the decision until May, then that's 2 months from now. That's already.
I guess they're doing
history. Right?
I don't know. There's a lot of theories out there, right? But what I do know is what's actually happening in front of our eyes, which is interest rates have. I don't want to use the word stabilized because they're anything but stable. If you look at the bond charts this week, it's boom, 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 boom. It looks like you're at the doctor hooked
Anytime
up to
you have a 25, 50 basis point move in one day, that's pretty substantial.
Well, I woke up Monday morning and the market was up 130 basis points, which is crazy for a single market open on a Monday. That just goes to show you how much that bank failing on the Friday impacted the markets immediately at market open. It came down significantly during the course of the day, and then the next day it was down even further. Then the day after that it was up again, down again, up again. So we're jiggity jig. We're just taking a look at what's in front of us, and we know there's a lack of trust in the financial system. Rightfully so. When a bank fails, people start to question things.
Sure.
And we expect in the short term things to stabilize. It'll be really interesting, like I said, to see what the next 2 announcements from the Fed end up being based on the data that they get from their consumer price index that they like to watch. They love the producer price index as well. So we'll see.
Pretty much came in line with what their expectations were.
Right? Yeah. Which That's open to interpretation too, but whatever. We're not getting paid the big bucks to sit in Washington, D.C., Russ, and make all the decisions. But all that to say, for those of you actually curious as to what the point is of this conversation, interest rates are still high.
Yes. Historically, probably not that high, but over the last year.
Yeah, I sympathize with people, though, that go, because that's what my dad always says to me. Well, I bought my first house, it was 14%. And I go, yeah, Dad, but you bought your first house for $113,000.
Right.
We're not buying houses for $113,000 anymore. So 7.5% interest rate on a $600,000, $800,000 home is significant. So there is, it's a pain point for sure. But keeping in the same, don't let me dominate, Russ. Like I don't want to come across as a dominator.
I always love listening to you, Brandon.
So keeping in line with what we've been talking about when it comes to real estate, I did a interesting case study a week or so ago on what is the actual cost of buying a home right now because interest rates are so high. And did you see that? Because I put it out there in the universe, but nobody really cared. So I'm going to do it. I'm going to talk about it again, right? Because I'm in the real estate industry, right? We're in the real estate business. We got to take the bad with the good and the good with the bad. So I think,
and you can keep on talking about it, and you got to maybe present it different ways for people to actually comprehend what's going on, right?
Yeah, you really have to understand. You've got to make an educated decision if you're buying a house or you want to buy a house. I was thinking about this morning. Anybody purchasing real estate in my world is an investor, because real estate is an investment. I don't care if you're buying your house because it's in the great school district or it's close to your church or it's a great place to raise a family. Like that, those things are all very, very important, but it's also an investment.
Right.
A large percentage of the wealth generated in the United States comes through the ownership of real estate. So you got to look at yourself as an investor, and you got to understand the market. Now, what's important about these types of markets is there are opportunities. There's actually more opportunities in a volatile market than there is in a stable market. Right? But at the same time, there's more risk.
There's more risk. I mean, you probably have less competition, right? So there's not as many people out there doing the same thing that you're doing.
Right.
So.
People are afraid, right? And then the people selling homes are also a little bit fearful, right? And so I was thinking about this about a week ago, Russ, and walk through this with me. I want to hear your input on it too. So as an investor, because everybody's an investor that's buying real estate, it's always your goal to it should be your goal. Well, maybe it shouldn't be your goal, but it's nice to have the goal of purchasing at the perfect time. Right. Right?
I mean, with anything, right? If it's houses, if it's stocks, if it's anything, you want even if you go into the grocery store and you want to get that sale.
I missed that sale, right?
You feel like you missed out. Yeah.
Exactly. So we're in a situation right now where we feel like we're approaching a bottom, like we call them market bottom cycles. Like we're hitting the bottom, right? We hit the top probably 2022, beginning of the year.
April, May.
Yeah. Okay. So now we're approaching the bottom, and the $1 million question always as an investor is, how do I time this purchase absolutely correctly so that I can get as close to the bottom as possible? If I can't get the exact bottom, how do I get as close to the bottom as possible, right? And when we talk about bottom, what we're really talking about is real estate values, right? Like, how do I get the best bang for my buck and time it perfectly? So we're approaching this bottom. On the other side of the bottom is typically an uptick. So if you go back and look at the last bottom of the market cycle, it was in 2012,
right
after the crash, right? Because it was a few years after things kind of fell apart that it even hit the bottom. Right. It didn't really start recovering until late 2012, early 2013. So on the other side of the bottom, typically what happens historically, I mean, anything is subject to a different experience, because guys, let's face it, it's 2023, everything's wacky, right? But traditionally, on the other side of the bottom, there's an appreciation, and it's a much more rapid appreciation than it was depreciation on the way down. It's kind of like a check mark, typically. It shoots up on the other side, and if you go back and look at the chart, you'll see it. So as an investor, the question that I'm asking myself and my clients and my partners is, would you rather buy on the way down or on the way up? If you can't time the bottom perfectly, Russ, because we're not magicians here, right? We have crystal balls, but they don't work right. Mine's broken. I'm thinking about that question. Why don't you answer it, Russ? Would you rather buy on the way down or on the way up?
I think I'd rather buy on the way down
Why?
because you're already at a discount of where it was, right? So it might go down a little bit more. You don't know how much it's going to go down, but you know that eventually it's going to eclipse what it was previously.
Yeah.
Who knows how long that's going to be, 5-10 years, but eventually it's going to get back up to where that peak was, just because things cost more in history of the world, right?
Yeah, and real estate is a constantly, maybe not constantly, consistently appreciating asset, right? It's not going to always go in a straight line up, but it's going to and then go up.
And it's eventually going to go. Yeah. It's always going to have those dips, but it's always going to. What I
always like to think about, and what I typically tell people is, fear is always short-term based in real estate. I mean, I don't want to.
I mean, that's one of the number one rules in investing is buy when people are afraid.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Baron Rothschild. You know that guy?
Baron Rothschild.
Sounds like a fancy guy, right? Baron Rothschild.
The Rothschilds of the famous Rothschilds.
Yeah. So he's the guy that coined the phrase, the best time to buy is when there's blood in the streets. And that's what he was talking about. He's like, get out there and make some moves when people are, bleeding out and dying. Right. I mean, I feel like, 200 years ago.
You want value. Right now, value investing is the in thing.
So going back to your answer, Russ, I like your answer. I'm in the same, I'm on the same page as you are. I'd rather buy on the way down because, number one, there's significantly less competition right now on the way down than there will be on the way up. Because typically what happens on the way up is you've got interest rates coming down, which is what's driving that upward swing, right? Right now you have high interest rates but less demand, so you have less competition. Mm-hmm. So that presents a whole bunch of other opportunities versus waiting.
Which is short-term pain, right?
Let's actually walk through the numbers.
You're buying when numbers are low,
yeah,
but you're paying a little bit more for it. But once those numbers go back up again, the interest rates go down, you can refinance.
Refinancing is always an opportunity, but let's do some math.
I like math.
This isn't going to be exact because I'm just going from my memory because I ran these actual numbers, but it'll be pretty darn close. I don't miss too much when it comes to numbers. So let's look at a $600,000 home. Okay. That's a good home price, right?
Yeah.
Let's assume we're buyers putting 20% down. Okay. So our loan amount is what? $480. Okay. So we're putting down $120,000. We're borrowing $480,000 at a 7% interest rate. If I took a comparison to a year ago when rates were 3, 4, 5%, I'm probably paying now, because I'm buying right now, close to $300 to $350 more a month simply because the interest rates are higher. Okay, you with me on that?
Yep.
So every month I'm paying an extra $300 out of pocket. We'll just keep the numbers round. If I look at the cost of that over a year, I'm just multiplying $300 by 12. I'm arriving at $3,600 of additional cost to own a home at a higher interest rate right now. Now, we would hope that people buying homes right now in a year and a half from now aren't carrying that cost forever. To your point, Russ, they can refinance and recuperate a lot of that expense that they've paid out. But if they don't, let's just say they don't. Right? They don't listen to us. They just keep their high interest rate loan and they pay that extra $3,600 over the next 12 months. Okay. So that's a cost. $3,600. Right. Mm-hmm. Let's be really, really conservative too. Okay. Let's talk about home appreciation.
Okay.
What's a average appreciation rate? You think?
About 7-8% probably.
Probably, right? So let's say 3%. Okay. Is that conservative enough for you?
That's pretty conservative. Yeah.
Okay, so that's
2-3%.
We're going to say that the home we buy today at a higher interest rate is going to appreciate over the next year at 3%. Mm-hmm. What is that?
What's that?
That's $18,000 of additional value gained because you own that asset. Okay, so keep track of these numbers for me, Russ. $18,000 in appreciation gain, costs of $3,600 because of a higher interest rate and a higher monthly payment. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, what I'm going to say next isn't completely applicable to every single market, but we can't really be specific about every single market. So I'm going to just talk nationally. Homes are being sold right now nationally on average. This isn't on average. Okay. It's not Bellevue. We're not talking about Bellevue, right? Or whatever, right? This is on average. Homes are being sold at a 2% discount nationally. Okay. What's that on $600,000? 12 grand. Okay. So I can either get the house for $12,000 less, or I can get like my closing costs covered because the sellers can contribute, some funds to help me cover my closing costs, buy my interest rate down, whatever. Who cares what you do with the money? Let's just stop and take that $12,000 and add it to our $18,000. What are we at now? 30?
30,000, yeah.
So we're at $30,000 of total benefit for buying a house right now, and we're at a cost of $3,600, right?
Correct.
So let's now add in the cost for you to refinance too. So let's give you an out of that high interest rate loan. And let's just say, and we're being conservative and probably overestimating here, but let's just say it's going to cost you, between paying the higher interest rate for a year and the appraisal, title, escrow, whatever it's going to cost you to refinance, your total cost is $6,000. So $3,600 plus $2,400 for the refinance charges.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I buy my house today. I'm getting 3% appreciation to the tune of $18,000. I'm getting maybe a 2% discount. Again, maybe not everywhere, but certainly on average. I'm getting $12,000 in discount. That's $30,000 of benefit, but I'm paying $6,000 in costs. My total net benefit to owning a home on the way down towards the bottom of the market is $24,000. I'm $24,000 better for buying that house today, a year from now, than I would be waiting for the other side of the market.
Dang.
Is that crazy or what?
I mean, when you break down the numbers, it makes so much sense, and it's easy to see when you look at them, but people don't always think that way, right? There's always that emotion that comes into it, and people are scared, and
it is scary, but
that's what we say, right? When people are scared, that's really the best time to go in and do something, right?
So I was thinking about that a lot, as you can tell.
Keeps you up at night.
That's no joke.
Yeah.
That's no joke. I've woke up in the middle of the night and
Bond rates.
and like numbers, right? And I want to like write down, like I can't forget like when I'm actually lucid to like revisit this. Otherwise I'll forget it. I'll be taking a shower the next day and I'll go, dang it, I had a really, really good thought at like 2:30 in the morning. I got so many kids at home. Russ, we talked about this last time. I got babies crying. Somebody's always up in the middle of the night. So I'm up.
Yeah.
Right? Whether I want to be or not, I'm up. And so I'm thinking about things. But anyways, I was looking at that scenario and I was going, the biggest complaint that I hear right now is just, I don't want to buy a house because interest rates are too high. I don't blame them. When you just look at that at like face value, that sucks. Right. We were at a 3%, 2.5%, 3% interest rate for a long time. Then all of a sudden we're 6, 7% now. That totally is a bummer. Right. I totally get it. But if you actually quantify the cost of that, it's $3,600. $3,600 is a lot. It is and it isn't a lot of money, right? Yeah. It's a lot of money if you're just going to go to Tulalip and throw down $3,600 on the craps table or whatever. Like, yeah, that's a lot of money. Yeah. But you're taking that $36 and you're investing it, and it's returning $24,000 in benefit to you. That's good investment.
That's a pretty good return, right?
Yeah. When the rest of the market's struggling, right? Banks are failing. Like, how do you escape that? You invest and you become an investor in real estate, right? So I just think it's an interesting kind of concept to think through. It's an interesting exercise. And so you're never going to be able to time the exact bottom of the market, but what you can do is understand your benefit for taking an action and making a decision today versus waiting. Because that is the natural human tendency, is to like, I'm going to wait this out. And I'm going to wait.
I can't tell you how many people have told me over the last
everyone says
5 years saying, I'm just going to wait for the market to crash. I'm just going to wait for the market to crash.
Yeah.
It didn't crash, and it hasn't crashed, and it's continuing to show its resiliency and perseverance. And
it's like Tom Brady.
It's like Tom Brady.
The market is like Tom Brady. Right? Now he's making buku bucks as a broadcaster, right? Yeah, the guy touches, everything he touches turns to gold. Like he doesn't.
Not bad, right?
He doesn't devalue, right? And this is, coming from a Michigan guy and a Patriot fan. So we can support Tom Brady's value. But yeah, the reality is if you look at market dynamics and the history of economics and real estate, buying real estate for a long period of time, like we're not talking about the people that are buying a house, living in it for a year and then selling it. That anything could happen in that scenario. Exactly. Right? But if you're buying a house and you're 3 to 5 years on the plan for that home or less, I mean, maybe 2 years nowadays, you're going to get some return on that. I mean, we sold our house in Snohomish that we owned for 2 years, and we made a lot of money. That's not always normal,
It's not.
But
No,
the
you can't count on
opportunity
that,
is
but-
there
Right.
for that to be a reality.
What other
for
investment
you.
can you say that about?
Yeah, for sure. You could probably do that if you knew as much as ChatGPT.
Right. There's another topic to come up with.
Right? Like if we were as smart as ChatGPT is, we could like play the stock market or whatever and like make money. But probably maybe not even as much as you can own a home for 3 or 4 years
Right.
in a good market, right? Or owning a home as an investment property that's producing cash flow and covering its cost with the cash flow. Like there's just so many opportunities. And so I try to find the opportunity and the silver lining, Russ, even in these tough markets. And there are opportunities there. It's just that month to month payment is what gets people so caught up on, is this the right decision for me? And I don't blame them.
Right.
But
you're always going to, your job as a mortgage person is to always make sure that they can afford that, right? So
yeah, they're going to qualify.
They're not going to be going into a situation where they can't afford what the payments are. So maybe the payments are a little bit more than they were, but we've already done the numbers. We've already made sure that everything is kosher with everything and that we know that you can afford that payment. So worst case scenario is that you lose your job or something like that, which you really can't control.
No. That could happen even if you don't own a house.
Right.
Lose your job.
Right. So
you're right. But there's nobody wants to be in a position where they can't make their house payment. It's a bad position to be in. But, there's opportunities if you do get into that situation to work with the servicer of your loan to, do a, forbearance or, loan modification. I mean, there's opportunities out there. So that's a lot, Russ. That's a lot of real estate stuff.
It is. It's always a good conversation, right?
It does feel like it's always a good conversation. It always feels like it's 5 to 6 minutes long, and then you look at it.
How long have we been on this for?
Probably like 40 minutes.
45 minutes, I think.
Already?
Yeah.
I feel like that's a joke.
It's just easy to talk to you. That's all.
It's easy to talk to you, Russ. You'll listen to me just spout off random stuff, which is
it's good stuff, right?
Yeah.
Everybody wants to listen to what Brandon has to say.
I mean,
Brandon
not my kids or my wife. So you're my only outlet, and like whoever our viewers are that we're casting our pods to.
Millions, I'm sure.
Yeah, we're in our pod casting out our line for viewers, and hopefully they're listening.
But now you know what podcast stands for. So
if you didn't get anything out of anything we talked about today, now you know what a podcast is.
Pretty impressive stuff.
Good.
All right. Well, is that it for today?
That's kind of,
how's the weight loss doing?
It's doing pretty good. Do I look slimmer?
You do, actually.
Do I? Okay. I don't feel.
So I've been on it for, this is my going on my third week right now.
Which one are you doing?
The semaglutide.
Yeah, but because there's like 3 different brands.
Well, I think it's Ozempic is the brand name. But
yeah, me too. Ozempic for life, bro. So I think I'm going on my 2nd month here. How's your nausea and stuff?
I think I just did my 3rd injection on Monday, and it's just started to feel it the last couple of days.
Yeah,
but not too bad. But this is the first time I've had any sort of symptoms for it. So I think I'm doing pretty good so far.
My first shot, I just was that real?
Yeah.
It didn't really impact me, although I did notice I had less of an appetite. My 2nd shot, I got really nauseous, and I was
eating breakfast this morning, and I'm like, I don't know if I can finish this.
Yeah. Which is kind of weird, but good.
Right.
That's what I'm, what I'm trying to do with it is not treat it as just like an escape route. Like I'm trying to reframe my habits around eating.
Right. And you still got to exercise. You still got to eat right.
It's not a miracle drug. I mean, it helps.
Right.
It helps you create kind of like a boundary. It's helping me create more boundaries around food in my life because I was the guy, still have the tendency to do it, which is what I'm trying to retrain myself out of is go back for seconds.
Right.
No, I'm going back for seconds. I like food. Like I just enjoy a good meal. But then my problem was I've got 4 or 5 kids that only eat like 3 or 4 bites.
And so you want to finish everything.
And then I'm like, if I'm going to have to
waste it.
If I'm doing the dishes, I'm not putting this in the trash, right? I'm going to eat this real quick. So that's what I end up doing. And before you know it, that's like 3 or 4 servings.
Yeah.
And it's not that my body was unhappy at like a higher weight. It's just, I don't feel comfortable. I can feel the weight kind of taking its toll as I get older on my joints and,
sure.
What's
the tally so far? How much have you lost?
Well, to be honest with you, Russ, I haven't really got on a scale. No, because for me personally, I'll obsess about it.
Yeah.
If you have me getting on a scale every day and I'm looking at my weight and I gain like 3 ounces, I'll obsess about it. Right. And that's another podcast conversation is mental illness, but
we're going deep and random today.
We have some of that on my side of the family for sure. We've talked about that a little bit in the past, I think, but yeah, I have an inclination or a tendency to kind of obsess about that kind of stuff. And so I just stay off the scale. Like people saying, hey, you look a little thinner is my victory.
Yeah.
And feeling better, getting to the end of the day and not feeling like I've hit my 15 drinks. not that feeling, right? Like where I don't go to bed just kind of, there's a lot of times where I go to bed just kind of feeling blah because I ate too much at dinner.
Right.
Or the other thing that I notice too is if I eat too much at lunch, like the second half of my day is hard. My body's like, why aren't you taking a nap right now?
Right.
Right.
It does make you a little bit tired.
Mm-hmm. It does. And so not having to feel like that's as big of a challenge, it certainly helps.
Yeah.
For sure. So anyways.
All right.
Weight loss.
There we go.
Yeah.
We've covered it all today. So thanks for tuning in.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
We appreciate you and we appreciate each other, right?
We do. And until next time.
Take it easy.